President Donald Trump's recent restatement of his stance on NATO member contributions has reignited discussions surrounding transatlantic relations and alliance dynamics. Throughout his time in office, Trump consistently emphasized the need for equitable burden sharing among NATO member nations, urging allies to increase their defense spending to meet the alliance's financial commitments. His recent reaffirmation of this position underscores its continued significance in shaping global security discourse. Trump's outspoken approach has sparked debate both domestically and internationally, raising questions about the future of NATO and the nature of transatlantic relations. His calls for greater contributions from NATO members remain a focal point, prompting reflection on the alliance's role in an evolving geopolitical landscape. Following Trump's latest remarks, NATO policymakers have offered a range of reactions. Some have reiterated the importance of collective defense and commitment to meeting agreed-upon spending targets, while others have emphasized the need for constructive dialogue to address concerns and strengthen alliance cohesion. For those seeking a deeper understanding of NATO member contributions and financial trends, exploring data available on the NATO website can provide valuable insights. Let's take this opportunity to explore the data and uncover the realities behind the rhetoric. Defense expenditure is defined by NATO as payments made by a national government, excluding regional, local, and municipal authorities, specifically to meet the needs of its armed forces, those of allies or of the alliance. For the purposes of this definition, the needs of the alliance are considered to consist of NATO common funding and NATO-managed trust funds. In 2006, NATO defense ministers agreed to commit a minimum of 2% of their gross domestic product, GDP, to defense spending to continue to ensure the alliance's military readiness. The 2% guideline is not a mandatory spending requirement for NATO members. Instead, it serves as a reference point for defense spending discussions and aims to encourage member states to contribute adequately to collective defense efforts. It is an indicator of a country's political will to contribute to NATO's common defense efforts, since the defense capacity of each member has an impact on the overall perception of the alliance's credibility as a politico-military organization. Since budget allocation is a national sovereign decision, member countries of NATO have different economic capacities and security priorities, leading to varied levels of defense spending. Some countries may exceed the 2% target, while others may fall short. As a result, there is considerable variation in defense spending across NATO members. The figure below shows member states' contributions from 2014 to 2022, with values of 2022 being estimates. The plotted data is obtained from the NATO website. It can be observed that USA, UK, and Greece have since 2014 consistently spent greater than or equal to the 2% GDP guideline. This figure illustrates contributions of the compliant member states since 2014. It can be observed that up until 2020, the US, UK, and Greece have always been the most compliant, with the US being the highest in terms of contribution. However, in terms of GDP, Greece has taken the lead since 2021. The figure equally shows a steady increase in member state contributions from 2017 to 2020, with a record high compliance of 10 states in 2020. Coincidentally, this period corresponds to the period when Donald Trump served as U.S. President from January 20th, 2017 to January 20th, 2021. The issue of burden sharing and defense spending has been a subject of political debate within NATO. Some member countries, particularly those meeting or exceeding the 2% guideline, have urged others to increase their defense spending to meet NATO's collective security needs more effectively. Donald Trump, during his presidency, frequently raised concerns about NATO members' defense spending and their financial contributions to the alliance. His points regarding NATO member states' payments and defense spending can be summarized as follows. Trump consistently called for NATO member countries to increase their defense spending to meet the alliance's target of allocating at least 2% of their respective gross domestic product, GDP, to defense. He argued that many NATO members were not fulfilling their financial obligations, leaving the burden of defense disproportionately on the United States. He characterized NATO members who did not meet the 2% GDP defense spending target as freeloading off the United States. He argued that the U.S. was disproportionately funding NATO's collective defense efforts, while other members were not contributing their fair share financially. Trump frequently suggested that the United States might reduce its financial support for NATO if member countries did not increase their defense spending. He viewed this as a way to pressure NATO allies into meeting their financial commitments and taking greater responsibility for their own defense.
I have been very, very direct with Secretary Stoltenberg and members of the alliance in saying that NATO members must finally contribute their fair share and meet their financial obligations. But 23 of the 28 member nations are still not paying what they should be paying and what they are supposed to be paying for their defense. This is not fair to the people and taxpayers of the United States. And many of these nations owe massive amounts of money from past years and not paying in those past years. Over the last 8 years, the United States spent more on defense than all other NATO countries combined. If all NATO members had spent just 2% of their GDP on defense last year, we would have had another $119 billion for our collective defense and for the financing of additional NATO reserves.
Trump's criticisms of NATO member states' defense spending and threats to reduce U.S. support raised concerns about potential divisions within the alliance and strained relations between the United States and its European allies. Some European leaders expressed frustration with Trump's approach, while others acknowledged the need for increased defense spending.
Yeah, NATO was busted until I came along. I said, everybody's going to pay. They said, well, if we don't pay, are you still going to protect us? I said, absolutely not. They couldn't believe the answer. And everybody, you never saw more money pour in to Secretary General Stoltenberg. Well, I don't know if he is anymore, but he was my biggest fan. He said, all these presidents came in, they'd make a speech, they'd leave, and that was it. And they all owed money, and they wouldn't pay it. I came in, I made a speech, and I said, you got to pay up. They asked me that question. One of the presidents of a big country stood up and said, well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay. You got to pay.
Let me be sarcastic. During this campaign, we will see and listen to many things. Let's be serious. NATO cannot be a la carte military alliance. Cannot be a military alliance that works depending on the humor of the President of the US.
We are strong enough to be able to defend each other, and that any statement of that sort needs to be recognized with the danger that it brings, but also a steadfastness on our.
I think what the presidential candidate in America says is also something to maybe wake up some of the allies who haven't done that much. So hopefully we all do more, and collectively we are stronger together.
Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share to support more engaging content.